So if we have a client sitting here and they have their arms outstretched, and I have them say certain things like, you know, I want to get over this problem, whatever it may be, and I test their arm strong and weak and strong and weak, there are a few possibilities of inaccuracy going on. Fred mentioned some of those the other day. You know, they may be pushing up like that, in which case they got more than one muscle going on that would get in the way of your accuracy. They may be, by the way, ill. They may not be feeling well, in which case quite often I've found when I do one-on-one muscle testing with somebody who's very ill, they'll go weak, 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 weak. It's very hard to find the difference between strong and weak for somebody who happens to be ill at the point. There are other people that just aren't very strong, and it's even more difficult to find a yes or no difference. Now, those who have more and more and more experience at it can detect those differences much better than those who have, you know, beginning experience at it. But also the tester, myself, if I'm testing somebody's arm, I can influence the result with my own intention very easily. You know, I can, if I want them to be reversed or not reversed, you know, I push on it, and not every time, but often enough to make a big difference. I can actually influence whether their arm is weak or strong. They can influence it as well. If they don't want to be found out, they can shift their thoughts onto something else, and they can be not found out, if you will, and give you an inaccurate test. I'll tell you something interesting. This was when I was first learning muscle testing. This was years ago. I was giving a talk. It was an evening talk to it was like one of these social clubs, like a Kiwanis Club, or I think it was a Kiwanis Club. There was a bunch of men there, and I was talking about doing this, and I was all enthusiastic about it, and I was talking about this arm testing and all this, and this fellow raises his hand, and he says, I don't believe any of that. Nice big challenge, okay? And I says, well, he says, arm test me. So he comes up, and I was going to arm test him on some yes or no, like my name is George, my name is Harry or something. And he says, but I want you to close your eyes. Well, I says, okay, all right. And then what he did the following. I was pushing on his arm with my eyes closed, and what he would do to the audience is he'd put up a 1 or a 2, meaning true or false, what he was saying. And he would say things like, I'm an attorney. I don't know whether he was an attorney or not. I'm a dentist. I don't know whether he was a dentist or not, you know. But I would test his arm, and I would get a strong or weak, and I would say what that was. I am married. I have 3 children. You know, he went through about 10 of those, 10, 11, maybe even more than that. We had a whole bunch of them, okay? And I had no idea what he was doing, 1, 2, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I'm a little nervous, you know. And so we finished, and he looked at me and says, you've got every single one of them wrong. And I looked at the audience, and they go, okay. Now, why did I get every single one of them wrong? Because he wanted me to? What?
He was probably masking it with his own...
Well, maybe. I don't know what was going on. It's interesting that we got every single one of them wrong.
Right. But couldn't he have been interfering with each of those? Like
well, he may have been.
He could have been...
He may have been, or he may have been reversed, or I may have been reversed on the testing, one or the other.
When he was holding his hand over your head, could that possibly have...
Oh, possibly, but I think he was doing this.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Fred had a comment back here.
So one way to think of it is not strong meaning yes and weak meaning no. It could be the other way around. It's just what is the yes signal, what is the no signal.
Well, I set that up. Strong was yes and weak was no.
You had already set that up.
Yeah, we had set that up, yeah.
Okay, but it's a perfect correlation.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect correlation.
It's absolutely perfect. It was absolutely perfect, okay? Yet it was wrong, 100%.
Yeah, which is pretty good.
I had a perfect score, yeah. Now, if it was random, I would be more concerned.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
But it was absolutely perfect in the wrong direction. There was more than likely reversal going on his part or my part or something like that, anyway. My point is there are lots of reasons why we can have inaccurate readings with one-on-one muscle testing. They're all over the place, okay? And they are especially prevalent for someone who's brand new at this. Now, on the other hand, there are many people, and some in this room, who use one-on-one muscle testing. They do it all the time, and they love the result. How many of you are proficient? I mean, you use it all the time, one-on-one muscle testing. Yeah, okay, we have a number of them in here, okay? And you like doing it? You trust your results, do you not? Okay? And so, am I right? There's potential for inaccuracy here? Okay. Why is it you would, why don't you respond to this, Lee, if you would. Why is it, even if we, to Lee, right here.
Me?
I'm going to ask you this question. Why is it, Lee, if we have these several potentials for inaccuracy, why is it you can get results that you have trust in?
I think my belief intentionality, and
Mhm.
I've done it literally thousands and thousands of times. I've taken about 250 hours of applied kinesiology and one whole day just learning how to do muscle testing.
Yes. Okay. But you have tested thousands and thousands of people. Okay. Nahoma, do you raise your hand too on that? Would you bring from Nahoma?
Raise your hand.
Right here. Why is it, Nahoma, if we have these potentials for inaccuracy, which are indeed there, why is it that you would trust your result? I assume you trust your result.
I do.
Uh-huh.
First of all, my results aren't 100%. Every so often, I'll do a muscle test and both the patient and I know it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll look at why it didn't work. But I trust the majority of the testing simply because the results that the testing leads to seem to work for the patient.
Okay.
So my trust comes from experience and experiencing the effect of the EFT that then flows from the muscle testing, or
Mhm.
the NAET that flows from it, or whatever I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have any interest in muscle testing. I'm interested in results. I'm interested in them getting well.
Sure.
So a part of it is my intentionality,
Yes.
and
Yes.
a part of it is I'm getting good results.
And yes, if you weren't getting good results, which is the bottom line always, if you weren't, even if you can't explain all this stuff, if you're getting results, that's the bottom line. So you keep doing it and try to refine it or whatever. Fred had a comment back here. Thank you very much.
Now, one thing I agree with Nahoma, because it's all that muscle testing is a test. Okay, so it's an indicator of something, and then you want to check it out in reality. What does it lead to?
Mhm.
But I think I get very accurate results with it because, for one thing, I don't set it up as being competitive with the patient. It's or the client, whatever you want to refer to.
Would you
the
state that
subject,
phrase
yes.
again?
I'm
One
not-
thing, I don't find myself competitive with the patient.
I'm not competitive. We're not in competition.
And may I expand on that for a minute?
Sure.
Meaning you're in sync with the patient. The two of you are working together. You have a common goal.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so
Important point.
if we're coming from that position,
Mhm.
and I explain that to them, I say, it's you and me together trying to figure out what your body has to tell us.
With joint
Yes,
intentionality.
joy and intentionality, okay?
Right.
And then, so if I can't tell, I look at them, I say, I couldn't quite tell then, could you? Let's try that again.
Mhm.
So I don't have any, there isn't any kind of, I'm the great tester and I'm going to figure this out, I know better than you.
Sure.
I don't care for that kind of position in relationship to testing.
And you will be wrong from time to time.
Sure, we will both be wrong in terms of figuring it out at times.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's a joint effort.
Sure.
Now then there's a lot of other things to take into account, like are there other variables intervening? If I'm trying to test somebody in front of an audience and people are making noise, that can interfere with the result.
Mm-hmm.
Is the person, like you said, fatigued? There can be, a variety of variables that can interfere, so you have to look at that. It's a very, very difficult thing to develop your skill at. It's not as easy as it appears,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But it's still learnable.
Of course. Anybody can learn. Go ahead, Larry.
As long as the mic is here, you get
Ah.
a chance. One thing I wanted to say is, when I first heard about arm testing, probably this has got to be true for a lot of people, it seemed very odd, and I wasn't sure really how much faith to put in any of it, because it was a system completely different from anything I had known before. But over time, what I like about it, indeed, what I like about this whole movement that we're in, is that it makes immediate something that we all sense, I think most of us anyway, sense in whatever therapy we did before, which is, it's like if you seek empathy with your client, this kind of attunement through arm testing really enhances empathy and attunement. And that's, to me, what I learn when I do arm testing is, it's not even the arm checking. As soon as I touch the person, there's a different connection with us. And so now I know, even though I still do it, I don't really need to do it, because once the connection is there, everything I'm going to learn from the arm test is available now anyway.
Mhm.
Although I still do it because it's kind of like a concrete, visible manifestation of something that's sort of reassuring to me. But I know it's kind of like a transitional, I see it as like a transitional language into an invisible language that I'm learning.
Would you agree with that, Bill? Would you agree with me? I think you just took Bill's entire presentation and put it into a sentence. No, right here.
Thanks. I just wanted to add that really the muscle testing is a dowsing response, if you like. And what a dowsing response is, it is your subconscious producing an action that creates manifestation in the direct forespace so that your conscious mind can see it and know what your subconscious is telling you. And when you have this interactive link with the individual, you don't need that, but it's always nice to have confirmation, bringing things from the unconscious level to the conscious level.
And he just took my whole thing and put it in one sentence. You don't really need it. That's the whole point. You can do the whole thing intuitively, but these are steps towards getting there. We start, in my view, we start with one-on-one muscle testing. It has a lot of value to it. I'll get to that, more of that in a second. Then we go from there to surrogate muscle testing. Then we go to intuition, but it's all intuition to begin with. And you can, this muscle testing, when it is accurate and you have two people working together doing this is a marvelous way for two people to get rapport and work together and have one body's response, give messages to both. They work together, and off and on they go with joint intentionality. I will also suggest to you that if we have patient A here who has the fear of public speaking, for example, and I do some muscle testing and with alarm points and all the stuff you do and find out a sequence, and you have no idea what that sequence is because you're outside the room, and we don't do any tapping on this person, and you come in this room and you muscle test them yourself, you will come up with a different sequence. You may find them reversed, I may not. And that's because the two of you are working together with your intentionality, and you will find your own combination that's worked out in there in the ether someplace, which is where you're getting it. Ether, is that the right word? It's not perfect, but okay.
It's a question so often of interpretation of the signals.
Yes.
Not just in getting them.
Yes, correct. Okay. So anyway, one of the main points I want to make about one-on-one muscle testing is not that you don't do it or that it's inefficient. I think it's a marvelous tool for those who want to use it. I'm not suggesting anybody here who's proficient in that turn around and say, oh, I don't want to use that. I'm going to do something else instead. If the bottom line is, how are you doing with that patient? Rapport with your patient is probably as important as anything else. Here's a question from Bruce.
How many people in here are familiar with ideomotor signaling? Okay.
We're basically going to do that with surrogate muscle testing. That's another name for surrogate muscle testing.
My question is, I'm wondering if given what you're saying, which I totally agree with, that muscle testing is a jointly intentional, it's a collaborative, I would term it a collaborative venture between you the tester, and the client. Okay?
Except when, as Fred says, you are competing with him, and then you're going to get the wrong answers.
Right.
And
Well,
it's
of
not
course,
gonna work.
if you're competing, then it's not a collaborative relationship. Sure. So, given that fact, I just want to throw out a thought. If it's a question and a thought, is muscle testing then similar to setting up ideomotor finger signals with a patient, yes and no, and I'm not ready to answer, and I don't know response fingers from the patient? And if it is, that was my question, and if it is, the second part is, could we in fact then find out what treatment points are indicated for that client by asking the client to touch the treatment points on the meridians while getting ideomotor signals from the client? In other words, could this be an easier way of doing it?
I think there are people here who do that. Yes. Are there not? Do you do that, Jill? Would you want to give it? She doesn't want to talk. All right, that's all right. We have somebody, Bobby, here.
Well, I want to mention one thing about muscle testing. It's a very precise science to it. A lot of times when you muscle test, your client will be dehydrated, and you will get false indications. And you first of all have to find out whether the person's dehydrated. The next thing is, a lot of times with even the way we touch the muscle, we can turn the muscle on or off for weakness and strength. And so it's a very precise science to really do it accurately. And when I use muscle testing a lot of times is basically if the client wants to see some proof, sometimes on a cognitive level they want to see, geez, where my answer's coming from, and I'll show them that I can turn their muscle on or off. I can make it weak or strong, regardless.
With your own intention.
Right, by a physiological.
Yeah.
Okay, by feathering or pinching the muscle, I can turn, because it goes to the brain.
Yeah.
So I can do that, so they can say, wow, maybe there is something. But it's very precise, and also people taxi the muscles. Once you taxi the muscles, some people are cranking down so hard, you do not have to crank hard to get a response. That once the taxing gets in the muscle, you're going to get false messages. So you have to move around and move different ones. But just by positioning a person or placing your hand on a certain way, you can change the muscle, the message.
Sure. Okay. Where's Susan Curtis? Raise your hand. Would you give it for a second? I think it was you and I that spoke on the phone, or even in Maine. Maybe it was Sandy. I'm not sure. But you have a chiropractor friend. If I recall it right, what they do when they want to find out what may be ailing the particular patient, they will run the finger down the spine by muscle test. Or no, they'll surrogate muscle test themselves. This way, going down the spine, like, whoa, they've got a weak muscle. Something's wrong with the so-and-so area, and we've got to do something, right?
I talked to him before I came, and he described exactly what he does. He takes two fingers together like this, and he takes his dominant hand and does this. And he focuses on each of the vertebrae in turn and asks them, are they out or in? And then he tests. And he just goes up the spine that way.
But who else uses, go ahead, Stephanie.
Well, I do the O-ring and pushing my index finger through to see, if it holds or not. But my favorite one is because all these years of meditation and sitting on a zafu, I do a half lotus with my leg up over and push on my knee. It gives me a nice time to stretch in session.
Sure.
And now over the phone when I'm treating people, I'm scanning. While a therapist is leading them through their algorithm, I'm scanning the body to see what needs to be treated, and I'm just continuing to muscle test as they're treating themselves.
And what are you asking? Are you asking yourself if they're reversed or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I check reversals. What I use is Greg Nicosia's sentence now.
Which is?
Which there are no psychological reversals currently affecting this problem. Test for that.
Okay.
Then if they are, then I scan for deserving safety, some others that Marty and I have come up with.
Yes. Okay. And if I was your client, and how would you know whether or not I needed a tap under my eye?
Well, I would say stomach. And at first I was having them hold underneath their eye. Now I'm not doing that as often. I am just saying just focus on eye, or I'm not even doing that. I say, client's name like Holly Eye. And once I focus my mind on the client, then I scan the treatment points. And I scan the treatment points. I do not scan the test points that I learned.
Okay, just the treatment points.
Just the treatment points.
You don't care about this, it's just whether or not it's happening.
Not anymore. Okay. That's something I've just dropped in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, okay. If I am your client, do I need to say anything, or you just do it?
You don't need to say anything. Okay. At first, you had to say something, I want to be over this problem.
Well, at first you had people say it.
Yeah,
like,
at first, but it's just like an evolutionary process for me. Now I'm having them drop that.
Yeah.
And though I feel like I'm playing at the edge of it, like I'm pushing my learning edge and all of this, I'm just going with it. My intuition is kicking in heavy duty. Sure. And now it's just coming to me which points need to be tapped. It's coming to me kind of auditory, which is kind of strange.
Oh, you're so wonderful. Do we have the camera on her? She's just so eloquent. That's just great.
And it's just... It's
awesome,
just,
too.
And I get this kind of voice in the back of my head says, chin. And I go, shut up. Chin! Chin! Okay,
yeah, I know.
Tap your chin.
You got to get rid of the shut up.
Yeah.
And
that's dropping away. That's dropping away.
Yeah.
It's taken some time.
Notice Stephanie's evolution. It is my evolution, and it is the evolution many of you may have. Although as we develop this, some of you may skip certain steps. It all depends on where you are and what you want to do, etc. But you started off as a muscle tester, a one-on-one muscle tester. And then you decided, well, gee, I could test myself in their behalf. You didn't have absolute confidence to begin with? But after a while you would do it, and gee whiz, and now you are, and you had to use the voice at first. You know, you had to have people say things at first, and then you say, oh, well, I don't really need that, you know. And now you're just beginning to just intuit the whole thing.
Yes, and I'm getting a strong physiological reaction. I can tell which point did it.
What's your physiological reaction?
Man, it's someplace between solar plexus and belly button, someplace in here. It's just like whoosh.
Okay.
Like a surge of energy, a dropping away of energy. It's like my feet go into the floor. It's like I plant.
Okay, that's interesting because I don't get any of that. I just get an inkling, a notion, and I pay attention to it. Okay. Yes, he has hormones. Yeah. The other thing, but this is a very, 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 very important point. Yeah, it's a very. One second, Marty. This is a very, very important point. Many people, in fact, I just had a couple of calls from people from the last seminar, and they said, well, Gary, you know, it's more like, how do you do that? It's like they were looking for a gong, you know. It's like a voice from God, under the eye, stupid, you know, like that, okay? And it doesn't happen that way. It's like somebody wants to have, it's like, okay, now, should I tap the eyebrow? Orgasm? No orgasm. Okay, no orgasm. You know, like that, okay? It doesn't for some people, you get a strong sensation here. I don't. I just get a notion. I just sort of a knowing, and I pay attention to it. Okay, and it's different for different people. I suspect over time, and remember, I don't have clients through my office. I don't have a chance to practice as other people do. Okay, behind you there with Will.
I use my breathing almost exclusively.
You use your breathing.
Breathing, so that when my breathing constricts, then I sense a reversal, either in myself or in the client or both. Then a point will come to me, or even whether to use the tapping, or whether to use mental tapping, or as we call it, body drumming.
And in time, what you will find with this technique, and one of the reasons that we're even doing this is because with this technique, and you start to develop points that are useful for tapping in a more elegant way, you will then begin to trust your intuition in other areas. Like, should I just have talk therapy this time with this client? Okay? Or is this a place for EMDR? And that'll sort of occur to you. Now, see, what's interesting is I don't know how to do EMDR at all. I am pretty good at NLP. And every once in a while, I'll get a little notion that says, well, you need to do a swish pattern. I don't do it very often, but I'll pay attention to it when it comes. Would you pass it back to Richard Kraftnick? You didn't raise your hand, Richard, but there's an input you have that I'd like to have, and that is you told me on the phone. In fact, one of your motivations to even come here was the fact that as you were dealing with your clients, you were noticing that you could literally feel when their energy shifted and when they were done with their session or their issue.
That's right. I can especially feel when the SUDS level is going down. Because
that's my thermometer, by the way. Mine's a little visual thing, and yours is a feeling thing.
Right, it's a kinesthetic experience. I start yawning, or energy starts going through me, and my eyes will start watering. And at first I thought to myself, what's happening here? And gradually I just came to realize when it stopped, they were blocked. Mm-hmm. They got reversed, and there was no more progress made. So I've gradually come to see that when this starts happening in me, it's because their SUDS level is going down. And I haven't found anyone who has had this experience until a couple of months ago. And a gentleman who does dowsing in San Rafael, over in Marin, we were at a dinner together, and he started doing some dowsing. And in a very elegant kind of a way, he was holding his little thing, and he'd go... I said, what's going on there? And he said, well, he's from Germany, I'm yawning. He said, this energy being released through me. I couldn't believe it. I just went up and hugged him. I said, absolutely, we've got to talk. And this is his experience also, that when he gets releases, the energy goes through him, and he yawns and his eyes water.
Yes. And let me emphasize that not everybody will have that. It's a matter of, but with this technique, we can start developing towards that, and you'll end up with your own sense of what works. Now, Larry, for example, does not suggest that. He gets this knowing. I mean, you mentioned that earlier. I get this little notional sense, if you would. One of the points I want to make is as I was doing EFT over and over and over and over again, it was like things were going so much faster, and the client were getting the results so much faster than any of us were used to, I think, before some of these techniques came out. Just like right before your eyes. It was sort of like, by comparison to conventional therapies and this kind of thing, which took quite a bit longer and with questionable results. The longer ones was like watching a movie, one frame a month, like that, okay? Whereas this is watching it real time or even speed it up, like that. And then you get to see the whole picture. You get to see the whole movie unfold. You get an intuitive sense, if you will, that is difficult to get through these slower processes. And that's how this thing started to develop. And anyway, this is all background to what we're going to spend a little time on. But I still want to spend a little more time getting some more basic here. Here for Larry, please.
My experience is that I like doing the testing with just one hand, because you can do it so freely and under any kind of conditions, and you only need one hand to do it. So you can do it when you're driving or carrying something or whatever. So I find that to be a very good way to do it. When I first took the training from Roger in 1980 and some follow-up things and meetings and so on, I would talk to him about doing the muscle testing, and he would poo-poo it, saying it was unreliable and all that stuff. And I don't find that to be the case. With practice, it gets to be extremely reliable.
And you use it very elegantly.
And I use it all the time, just part of what I do. I would recommend that for all of you that you treat yourself for the psychological reversal about being able to do muscle testing. We're getting all this resistance, I still hear people saying they got a lot of resistance, so there's something else going on.
I'm not hearing much of that today. Okay, we dealt with that yesterday, as you recall. We did discuss that.
And then you don't have to go through all of that, and nor do you have to do it with the client. Just go on and work with the problems.
Okay. Marilyn had a comment here, or a question.
I'm a hypnotherapist, and I work with my clients in an altered state myself. I put myself in trance when I work with my clients. I have a special technique of counting down from 25 to 1, and when I'm doing that, the client's going very deeply, and I'm going very deeply too. And in that state, I open up as a vehicle for any information that wants to come through me to come.
Through you, not by you.
Absolutely. And so I do EFT on clients while they're in trance. I touch them while they're in trance. I ask them first if it's all right. And it's just given to me where to touch, what to do, what to ask. And even the issues, I don't even do a SUDS, even the issues come through me because I set up the stage for myself to be a channel or a vehicle through which all this information can come. And it's really a miracle watching EFT and hypnotherapy combined, because in the state of trance, EFT is extraordinary. People release issues that we bring up in hypnosis. We go right to the issue, and it's felt experience. Some people see it, and then we can release it through EFT. It's quite powerful.
Well, I can imagine it would be. You are one of very few hypnotherapists that have taken and run with it, but there should be, my guess is that would be one of the major frontiers for it, for all of it.
It's really very amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody here back here well, Ruth Jackson has had her hand up for a while back there.
I just want to share a simple way that I've used the tapping intuitively is I tap with the person and I follow my hand, and my hand will go skip a point, go to a point, and after the hand goes there I'll say it, and when it's time to stop my hand will go like this. And so I feel this like filament connection with the other person, and I've paid attention to where the hand goes and skipped points and gone back to points, and that seems to work.
That's interesting. What I'm going to do here shortly is I'm going to show you the actual technique itself as I do it from a surrogate muscle testing point of view, and then we're going to take a little break and we'll have an actual session with it. But one of the things I first started doing with this, which is a parallel to what you were talking about, you just let your hands go someplace. When I first started saying, I would go right down the body and say, well, okay, do we need the eyebrow? and I get a yes or no. Do we need the side of the eye? Do we need under the eye? Do we need under the nose? Do we need the chin point? I go all the way down it. But after a while, what I do now instead of that is I get the notion that we should tap on the side of the eye, and I test that. Typically, I'm right. Okay. And then I get the notion I should tap here. Typically, I'm right. Okay. Not always, but typically, I'm right. And then after a while, I'm done, and I've got 2 or 3 points, 5 points, 1 point, something like that. I do the same thing you do. I just sort of fell into it, just with practice. Okay. We need to recognize not just with the words, but with our being, that the healing that's going on is not done by us, it's done through us. Okay, it's very important. You must get yourself out of the way, and therein lies the major technique here. Now, what I want to do is contrast something for you for a second. We talked about one-on-one muscle testing, and we talked about its possible inaccuracies. We also talked about the fact that for some practitioners, it's a marvelous thing because you get great rapport with somebody. Joint intentionality works and so on, and you get the bottom line is what you do with your patient, whether it works or not. Okay. Now, there is no difference between you pushing on your client's muscle, other than the rapport issue, but there's no technical difference with you testing a muscle of your own as though you were the client. Now, Susan's chiropractor friend was just testing his own muscle as though he was the client, correct? He goes down the spine, etc. You could go over the body, and you could go to the collarbone point if you wanted to, and test that way if you were proficient in testing with this kind of muscle. I happen to use this muscle. Other people do it like this. There's all kinds of other ways, all kinds of muscles you can test. Topless Fleming, for example, doesn't even test the muscle unless I've talked to her. She just feels whether her fingernail is rough or smooth. Very subtle, but it's an indication to her, whether we got a yes or a no on this question. It's a dowsing response. I'm sorry. You hear the Sandy, please.
Speaking of that, my husband's also a chiropractor. He's certified
Yes.
in applied kinesiology, and he uses a toughness machine, which is just a lens which he rubs on, and then, is always putting his other hand over the body. He finds absolutely all his work is doing this rubbing where you're either sticky or smooth. And everything's found from that. So that's another dowsing response.
And may I suggest to you that in another way of looking at that is just simply a metaphor for your intuition.
Totally.
All we're doing with whether you're testing a muscle like I'm going to show you that we do, or some other muscle, there's no magic about which muscle you test. And ultimately, for the surrogate muscle test, you can go right by it if you want to, if you just want to use your intuition. Okay? But for a lot of people that have to go step by step, like I said the other day, you start with mechanical EFT that works, and you go off into surrogate muscle testing. You stub your toe a little bit, and you come back, and you stub your toe. After a while, you get some success here, and you like that, and you do this, and you don't do that much anymore, and you go to intuition. And I talked about that yesterday, but that's a very important point: is being able to always fall back into familiar territory, where you're going to have high percentage results. Was there anything more you wanted to say on that? Oh, okay. Let me take a look at where I am here. Okay. What I want to do now is well, first of all, I want to ask another question. Who else here uses surrogate muscle testing in any way, shape, or form? Okay. Would you give the mic right in front of you there? And how do you use it? In what fashion?
I use this kind of response sometimes. It's just another dowsing technique that's mine that I developed. I had to search for one that worked for me, and occasionally I use it with patients who either have difficulty being touched, where I think there's a touch issue, and we're enough in rapport that it feels like I can ask the questions myself, and I'll be asking the questions. Sometimes I've done it by asking the question out loud and doing it, but sometimes I'm doing it. A lot of times I'm doing it just to myself.
Do you ask questions like should I tap on the collarbone point, or are we reversed here?
Yeah, I'll ask about reversals, and then I'll ask about reversals and see if there's something there, and then I'll ask about.
What specifically do you do?
Specifically, well, it depends on the patient, because I don't have a set system,
Okay, is there a specific question you would ask?
It's more responsive to a set of clinical circumstances. It's more like, when you ask me to detail it, it's sort of like what's really happening for me is I'm sitting with a person in my office, and it doesn't feel like it's appropriate or I want to somehow engage in some kind of physical touching that is required with a traditional muscle testing or whatever. And it feels appropriate to do something like EFT or whatever, some kind of diagnostic process, perhaps. And I feel enough rapport to be able to ask those questions myself, and I'll simply ask the questions and be kind of covering my hand and using my own hand as an indicator.
Sure.
About do they need some kind of reversal, do they need some kind of tapping. I'll even use that, would EFT be appropriate at this point in time?
Yes.
Things like that.
Okay. And once you get really in touch with that and get more and more trust in your intuition, which this is a metaphor for your intuition, or what you were doing.
Yeah.
Once you get in touch with that, and when you ask questions like, what technique should I use here, you're going to start getting answers that are going to take you into ultimate therapist land. Because there are times maybe you shouldn't use EFT. You should just have talk therapy today for them, you know?
Well, I usually get a couple things. I don't not only get information, I'll also get information about whether my information is accurate, whether I'm in rapport or not. Yeah. I'll know, there's a kind of knowing that resonates with some sort of deep place in the body about whether I'm in touch with that or not.
And that's your intuition. You don't need a muscle testing.
No, that's just a knowing.
Lee, I think you said you use muscle testing.
I use two different kinds of surrogate testing. One, I use simply the finger rub or the palm rub, and I've established my own signal for that. Like a sticky response is yes, a smooth response is no.
Sure.
However, I've also had couples come in, or a mother and an infant or whatever, and I'll muscle test the person to become the surrogate and say, I'll ask permission. Is it okay for this entity to surrogate for so-and-so? Yes. Is it okay for that entity for this person to surrogate for them? Yes. Then I'll have them say, let's say the person's name was Mary, and the patient's name was George. I'll have them say, my name is George, they'll test strong. And my name is Mary, that's their own name, and they'll test weak. Then I'll do the treatment on the surrogate, and then I'll ask, is this treatment complete? If not, then I'll ask more questions as to which meridians. And once the treatment is complete, this surrogacy is over, my name is Mary, they'll test strong, my name is George, they'll test weak.
My question to you, keep the microphone if you would. Why do you use a third-party surrogate? Why wouldn't you just use yourself?
I can do that. See, I like communicating to the patients the idea that you can talk to your body. And that's really important. And I teach people how to do their own testing.
Yes.
So they can test to see if their collarbone breathing is out, if they're reversed or whatever. So I try to teach every person I work with how to test themselves. And since I do a lot of hypnosis, I'll either teach them ideomotor questioning or I'll teach them a simple self-testing.
Okay. All right, great. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Well, I don't use surrogate testing, but all through the years before I learned EFT, I have always just told my clients that they know and asked them. And maybe it's an instantaneous trance, but I just will say something like, and I'm going to ask your unconscious a question, and I know you don't know the answer, so just relax and tell me what comes. And I'll say, especially some clients who I've worked a lot with, and they'll come in and I'll ask, what technique do we need to work today? And sometimes when I was working with a lot of Ericksonian stuff, at the end I would say, I'm asking your unconscious what percentage of this problem has been healed, and they would tell me. So I would ask all these things, and I've always gotten answers that seemed to work. So I'm just assuming then that I could do the same with EFT, right?
Yes.
I mean, because I have trouble with the testing.
Why wouldn't you?
I ask them. They know.
It's the same intuition.
Right.
And it's the same thing.
Once I just say, well, I know you know, then they accept that they know.
That's right.
And
I will quite often when somebody seems to be stuck on a physical issue. Like I did this in Denver. I had a lady that came up that had pain, and she had broken a toe. And I think the pain started at an 8, went to a 6, but it just stayed at a 6, stayed at a 6, stayed at a 6. And so I said, well, if there was an emotional issue that was contributing to your toe pain, a broken toe, mind you. I mean, there's reason for the pain, okay? What was it? I just asked that question. She says, because I'm so mad at myself for the way I broke my toe. And so we dealt with the anger. The toe went down to a 1. She went dancing that night. I remember that. Some of you were there. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Go ahead, Peggy.
So many times, if the baby is teething or something, we'll just say, well, let's tap and see if we can relieve them. And so by having the moms do it, and teen moms especially, it's very bonding with the babies for them to be testing on the babies. Also, when we first did TFT, one of the other therapists could not test men because they would lock their muscles. And so she had to keep telling them to breathe as she was testing them because then they couldn't lock their muscles. And my chiropractor has done that for years. He'll take and see how many vitamins you need or what vitamins you need by just simply you holding it and muscle testing with it for how many to take, and then just checking physical ailments with that too. But my daughter-in-law's mother-in-law has to go with her husband because the chiropractor is not strong enough to muscle test him, and she surrogates through his wife because he doesn't believe in it.
All right. I want to cover the basics of how I do surrogate muscle testing before we have the break, and then after the break we're going to actually have a session with this. Okay. But anyway, I want to preamble this with the fact that what I'm going to show you is a way that I do it. It is not the way that it gets done. You can set up your own muscles any way you want to do it. You can set up your own question and answer system. You can use it for anything you want. You can use any kind of muscle you want. I happen to do this. The only reason I do this is because if you look at Roger Callahan's tapes, from whom I got most of my training, you'll see one of his tapes. He muscle tests himself two ways. One of the ways is to do this, you know, which is really tough on your back. You know, you either go to well, I've never perfected this, but he would go something like I want to get over this problem. Okay, I don't want to get over this problem, and I made that up. You see a long and a short there, okay, and so that was a way he would do it, but that's tough on the back, okay. So you'll see. I think it's on this one of his phobia tapes, I think. But anyway, he shows doing this. Okay, and what you're doing, you're testing a muscle. I don't even know which muscle it is back there, and frankly, it doesn't even matter to me, because when I first started doing this, I would say to myself, well, okay, let me test a muscle. And I was very, very concerned about doing it right. So I mean, I didn't want to like test this muscle that I was watching him do, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't testing the muscles in my knees and my ankles and every place else. And I was standing up, and what I would do is I would go like that, okay? And I would try to find a difference. I'd say, my name is Gary. Okay. My name is George. Oh, but I just got a difference right there, okay? But at first, I wouldn't get any difference at all. My name is Gary, and then I would say. I had all these doubts about it, okay? So I had to self-test myself. And when you have doubts, another word for that is psychological reversal, right? And so am I going to get a result, a difference? Probably not, and I didn't. I mean, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. You know, Roger says it worked, but it doesn't work, you know. But after a while, I would get a difference. I would stand in front of a television set, and I'd hear people talk, you know, and I'd say, this person's stressed. No, this person's not stressed, you know, like that. And that's just a way for me to practice. After a while, I began to develop a kind of a sense for this. I began to say, it wasn't perfect. I wasn't always trusting my result because I was new at it. I hadn't developed the neural connections, if you will, or whatever you need to develop this. That I was in the process of developing them. But after a while, I would do that, and then I got to say, well, this kind of bothers my back, you know, twisting all that way, you know, and keeping my legs absolutely straight and all of that. So I thought, well, I can just see if I can do it just sitting down, you know. So I go, okay, well, that's better on my back, you know, like that. I'd do that, you know, and so I would do that, and then after a while, I go like this, you know. And what I do now is I just do this, okay. Because it's very subtle. I just, you know, it's very subtle. It's just like somebody rubbing, you know, their fingertips and getting smooth or rough. Okay, it's very subtle. I just, you know, I have to explain to the patients, by the way, because they're sitting across from me going like this, you know. I said, what I'm doing, I'm testing my muscle as though I'm you. Oh yeah, that's interesting, you know. I said, I can hear the side of your eye, you know, eyebrow, you know. So it gets kind of strange. If it's been strange for you so far with clients, you've got another level of strange, unless you want to hide it, you know. But I'm not hiding it. I'm right out there in front of them, you know. So, and it doesn't seem to matter. They're going right along. So anyway, again, I'm showing you a way to do it. So what I do is I just assume I am the client, okay? And I ask in fact, if you will look at, I think it's the very back page on your manual, your notebook. I think I have this listed, I believe it's on the very back page. Do you see there where I have like questions like PR clear, for example? Is that on the very back page? Okay, this is an example of some of the questions that I ask. Okay, so the first thing I may do is, see, I've already gotten from the client that what the issue is. The issue is that time when my mother didn't let me go to the prom. Okay, and they have anger about that. Okay, and so I've talked to the client. We know what the issue is, and I'll just say to myself, as though I'm the client, is PR clear? And if I go long to me, I've set it up. Long to me means, yeah, PR's clear. Okay, no PR here. Psychological reversal. So, okay, and then then what I'll do is I will just ask myself about the various points. Where should we tap? Eyebrow clear? Eyebrow's clear. I mean, we don't even need to tap on it. Okay. Side of the eye clear? Oh, came up short. You got to tap. That means something to do. I came up short. That's the way I've set it up. Something to do. You can reverse it if you want. It's my own signal, you know, to the whatever it is that's giving me this stuff. Remember, it's going through me, not by me. Okay, so I've got to get myself out of the way. Own signal. And then I got to say it differently. See, I've talked to myself about how to explain it. I've been doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it, and then I describe how am I going to teach somebody else to do it, because as I do it, I keep refining it. But anyway, the technical way of doing this, my way, would be to say, is PR clear? Okay, PR is clear, in my example. Okay, then I would say, under the eye clear, no. So now we tap under the eye. By the way, I don't need to point under the eye to do that. I just know. I can just say to myself under the eye. I'm just pointing here to give you a visual cue. Under the eye, no. Okay, so that means we got to tap. That means there's something to be done. So we tap under the eye. I want to interject something here, because you may be wondering why it is I just started off with saying is PR clear, and then I pointed to under the eye. Is under the eye clear? The EFT comprehensive algorithm starts with the eyebrow, side of the eye, under the eye, and so on down the body, as you are well aware. So why did I start this last example off with is under the eye clear? Well, that's because what I'm doing, and what you will be doing eventually, is I am getting to the point where I have been quite proficient at surrogate muscle testing. I get to the point where I'm doing it to intuition only. And in the process of that, my intuition starts to click in all the time, and you will see this with great frequency with all the sessions that are going to unfold, not only today, day 2, but day 3 as well. I won't start up here and go down and then check each one of those. I won't be doing that. What I'll do is my intuition will just take me to a point. I may say, is under the eye clear? I'll point right to there instead of beginning up here, because my intuition tells me, hey, check that point out first. Or is under the nose clear first? I will do that, and I'm right quite often. I mean, I'm right the vast majority of the time, and so that just saves me time. I only point that out to you because I want to allay any confusion that may exist. What you may want to do as you're learning this is just to start in the standard way and just go on down the body. Just start up here and say, is the eyebrow clear? Check that out. And the side of the eye, under the eye, and go on down until you get your sequence completed. Anyway, I wanted to point that out to you just in case there was any confusion on it. Then I say to myself, are we done? And I get a no. Means there's more to be tapped. Okay? And so then I say, eyebrow clear? Well, the eyebrow's clear. Okay, don't need to tap there. Are we done? No. Under the nose clear? Oh, not clear. Not clear. We need to tap under the nose. Okay? We're filming this so you can watch it over and over again. Okay? That's why it's being filmed. Okay? Under the nose? Okay, we tap into the nose. Are we done? No. Okay. Chin point. Not clear. Chin point clear? Not clear. Okay, we got to tap into the chin point. Are we done? Yes. We're done. So now I'm done with a round that I need for that. We didn't have psychological reversal, so we didn't have to do that correction. We did 3 points, somebody said, and I do it very quick. Okay, in seconds we got the thing done, and we've got to this level. Now, ultimately though, I've got to ask the client. I mean, we started off with the SUDS or whatever, so I've gotten the SUDS to begin with, and now the SUDS was a 7 as they thought about it, and now, well, it's a 3, or it's a 4. Or maybe they didn't make any headway at all, okay? Now, if they didn't make any headway at all, the worst thing you can possibly do is to say, oh, the damn thing didn't work. I'm going to throw this away. Because lots of things can happen. First of all, you may have gotten your own self in the way. I may have gotten myself in the way, and I'm quite aware that I'll do that from time to time. It's like it's not going through me, it's going by me. Also, you will find when you do this, psychological reversal goes in and out in seconds. And while we said psychological reversal was okay to begin with, 2 seconds later it may have been in place, as they are now starting to tap and they start to get self-doubts themselves, and bingo, now they have reversal we have to deal with, and I didn't know it until I go back and test again. The most important thing you have to do with this is trust it, and trust it, and trust it. It will not be perfect for you at first, but as you go on and on and on, after a while you'll see, wow, you really thought maybe so-and-so was the case, but you trusted what happened here, and bingo, like you may say to yourself, I got a tough case here. This is going to take me forever. You know, one tapping point and they're done. That'll happen. Okay? Then you go out, and when you have one of those, then you say to yourself, I got something here. Okay, you're going to have that experience. Like Nahoma was saying, experience is very important in this. Same with muscle testing. You won't get it right at first. At least you'll stub your toe a number of times at first, and after a while, it starts to work better. So, but anyway, so I'll ask for psychological reversal, clear or not. Then I'll find the points or not, and I'll keep asking if I'm done or not. Then I'll ask for the 9 gamut or not. And the way I do that, by the way, is I just take my eyes. I could either say 9 gamut, but I will take my eyes and I'll put them hard down right. This is what I do. That just tells me 9 gamut, And I'm finding over and over and over and over again, 9 gamut is clear. 9 gamut's clear. 9 gamut's clear. 9 gamut's clear. That's one reason I said, why not? Why use it? That plus the fact that in not even using it hasn't seemed to bother the results at all. That's the reason why I say, well, why bother with 9 gamut? Okay, but I still check for it. Okay, and if I get it, then we're going to do 9 gamut. Okay. Yes. Back here to Bruce, please.
One question. Are you tapping for the client?
No. No. They could be on the telephone while I'm doing this, or they could be sitting in front of me. Now, there are times when I think I should tap for the client. They may be having some emotional issue or something like that, and what I'd rather do is take the time to have them start doing all this. I'll just go right over to them. This is the way I do it, and I'll just fall back, if you will, to mechanical EFT. I'll put my hand on their back. I'm hugging them in a way. And I'm tapping on the various places. I'll even be talking to them. Even though we have this emotion, it's okay. We can let this thing go. As I'm tapping, and that'll bring them down typically.
Are you tapping on yourself, surrogate tapping on yourself for the client?
No.
No. Like if you're treating somebody on the phone that maybe isn't able to tap, could you get results?
I have not done
tapping?
that, but I will tell you, I am not about to say to myself I couldn't do that. That would just be a limit on the process. I've never done it, so I don't have experience with it, but my guess is, yes, you could do it. I think you need their permission to do it, or you're not going to make much headway. Okay? Because the two of you need to work together to get this healing done. Okay? Here for Marilyn.
Gary, you said you assume that you are the client. Is that the same as checking in behalf of the client? When I'll do the surrogate tapping, I'll say, does Lisa need this? Yes, no.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm doing it in behalf of the client, not as I am the client.
Frankly, I don't think it matters. The intention is you're trying to help that client, and you're picking up information from other dimensions, if you will, and you're using this technique. I am assuming I'm the client. That's just what I'm doing. That's the way I put it. If it worked for you to be in behalf of the client, then do it in behalf of the client. The bottom line is, does it work? And remember, I'm showing you a way, not the way, and there are lots of ways to do this. That's why when I first started opening this seminar, I was talking about the fact that my fondest hope is that everybody here will launch from this and get far, far better at this than I am. Okay, I need to go on just a couple more seconds here. Then we have to have it. Well, go ahead, Pat. Pat over here.
This is a follow-up to your question, Bruce, and I'm not sure I misunderstood what you said and what Lee said. When you have mothers come in with babies, are you having the mothers tap themselves on behalf of the baby, or are they tapping the baby? Okay, so that is true surrogate. Okay.
And that's it. I'm talking about surrogate testing here, and the subject you're talking about is surrogate tapping. And I don't know why you couldn't do it, but I do think you need the other person to be in sync with you and allow it, so to speak. I don't think you're going to be able to just override something. I'd like to interject again with one more clarifying point. You will notice that in part of the examples I'm giving, I have you say, done to be able to tell you whether or not you're done with this round of the tapping. Now that I found very useful for me as I was beginning to learn surrogate muscle testing, and that's why I'm showing it to you now. However, as a practical matter, and remember, I'm blending, from strictly surrogate muscle testing into intuition. So, intuition sort of creeps its way in here. You will find in the sessions that I do, again in day 2 and in day 3, I don't use this done very often. As I mentioned before, I will start maybe like under the nose or under the eye like that, and I'll just keep going where my intuition tells me to go. And I'm not checking done each time because I know I'm not done. I intuitively know that I'm not done until finally it goes across and that tells me I'm done. That's the way I've set it up now. So what I actually do as I'm perfecting this for myself and what I'm describing here are somewhat different. Remember, when I'm dealing with the clients in these sessions, I have their utmost welfare in mind. I want to deal with that client, and I'm less concerned about teaching the mechanics at that point, even though teaching the mechanics is part of my responsibility here. I want to point out to you that while I may not be doing things precisely the way I'm talking about them now for you, that's only because I'm developing and growing myself in these processes. What I'm trying to describe to you now is a way for you as a newcomer at this to develop it. You'll find your own blend, your own way of growing into it as time goes on. Also, a couple of things I want to point out. One of the real advantages of this whole process of surrogate muscle testing, which you will see evidenced many times in the sessions, is you can know where you are, especially with psychological reversal. Many times you'll have people will be saying things like they'll be doing the reversal technique, because I found them. I said reversal clear, and they're not clear, and then they will start doing the reversal technique. Like even though I have this problem, I deeply, completely accept myself, and you'll watch me do this, and I'll keep doing this because what I'm doing is I'm waiting for a time when reversal clears, and that may clear right on the first time they do the affirmation, which means we can stop right there, or I just may go on and on. We're just not getting by it. We're just not getting by it. We're just not getting by it. And that lets me stop right there. And then do this reversal correction more emphatically, or find some other way to get by reversal, because I know I'm not getting by it. So that's one of the things you'll see with some frequency, and one of the real advantages to this whole process. And also, you'll find me occasionally holding up my fingers like this, or I may put my fingers to the audience, like I may go 2 or 5 or 1 or something like that. And what I'm doing there is I'm letting the audience know what my thermometer is telling me. I'm actually seeing a thermometer in my mind's eye that is got some red liquid in it, and if it's very high, it's a 10, and if it's down at the bottom, it's a 0 or 1, and I'm giving an estimate of it. And quite often, you'll notice I'm very close. Now, I may say a 2, and they may say a 3 or a 4, for example. That to me is fine. I mean, we're close enough because we're both using different scales. If I said a 2 and they said an 8, now something else is going on. We've got a new aspect, for example, or something like that. Or if I say an 8 and they say a 2, then I'm concerned about that. I may be wrong, of course, but it's something to investigate with them. But you will notice with great frequency, I'm intuiting pretty close to where they are. And that's something you can develop yourself, so it allows you to know when they're making progress with the problems you're addressing. Also, I want to emphasize one more time, you need to trust this process. You will oftentimes get answers, and if you try to override it with your own ego or your own sense of what is supposed to be right or so on, you're going to get yourself in your own way. You need practice with this, and you need to develop what we're calling the neural connections to make this work for you. It's just like being an athlete and shooting free throws, for example, in basketball. You need to develop these neural connections, so you know how to do this over and over and over again. The same thing with your intuition and your surrogate muscle testing. You develop neural connections by practice. That's what we do here. Practice, practice, practice. You get better at it and better at it and better at it. Also, just before the break, I want to cover one other thing, and then we're going to have an actual thing. Actually, Tom Sandoz is going to come up, who has a fear of public speaking or stage fright, right? So, not a big one, but get over that. Yeah. But I announced this because I want you to get real nervous all during the break, okay? And later on, we're going to do some work as though we were on. What's that? This will be an expensive session. Yeah. And later on, we're going to do some work with this, like we're on the telephone. But I do want to cover one thing just before the break, and that is people will often ask, well, how do we assess or diagnose for substance sensitivity? How do we know whether we're sensitive to wheat or sugar or something like that? And what I will do in a case like that is I will have a conversation with the client. Oftentimes, the client already knows what they're sensitive to, okay? And I'll say, well, if there was a problem here with what you're eating, drinking, wearing, or whatever, what could it be? Okay, well, I'm going to get some answers. And oftentimes, within that answer of 2 or 3 things, we've got 1 or 2 that are candidates. So I will do that to narrow things down, and then I will test it with an arm test. And I will say, wheat clear? Well, in this case, wheat is clear, okay? Corn clear? Whoop, corn not clear, okay? Now, one of the things that the Callahan teach, Roger teaches in TFT-DX, at least he used to, was that you need to say, have the client, if you're going to test the client with their arm test, you have the client say corn, and maybe you'll go long on corn, that's fine, but then you need to have them say corn, I want to be healthy, which is a test for whether or not corn reverses them, okay? But then you have the question is, well, what if they don't want to be healthy? The phrase I want to be healthy is a reversing phrase as well. So are you reversing on corn or corn I want to be, or I want to be healthy? Then you got to say corn I want to be sick, and it gets into a rather long, involved kind of thing. And I wonder anyway what we're really getting out of that. I think you can very easily just say, is corn a problem here? And that's what I mean when I say is corn clear, which encompasses. Does it reverse me? Does it bother me in some other fashion? Is corn a no-no? Okay, is corn clear? And I get a yes or no on that. And I don't care if it reverses me or what. If it reverses me or not reverses me, as long as it's toxic to me, I shouldn't have corn. Okay. Now, the one thing I don't know, by the way, and this is something I am developing, is I don't know if corn tests to be a no-no, whether that's a big player on a scale of 0 to 10 is a 1 or a 10. I don't know that. But one thing I have done, and I am doing, and will be doing some today, and I just haven't put it on the toxic substances, is when I'm talking with someone, I see a thermometer in my head. I talked about it the first day. And when that thermometer is real low, that means we don't have much charge on this issue. And when that thermometer is up here, you got a big charge on it. In Denver, I was having a one-on-one client with someone, and we were dealing with an issue, and the issue came down, down, down. I could see it in my thermometer. Okay, and the client was reporting the same, and I thought we were done. And all of a sudden, bingo! Here come a brand new thermometer, boop, like that. And at the same time, I could see, some emotional stuff in the client, and they were tuning into a new issue, and I saw it instantly. Okay, not always perfect, not always there, but the more you trust, the more you get used to it, the more that'll happen, and the more you'll see it.